What's going on, YouTube? It's that black dude and I'm back. And today we're talking about walking away. Talking about when I walked away. And I'm talking about walking away from the Liberal Democratic Party. Alright, so I guess I'll start from the beginning. I'm sitting in traffic. I got some time. Like I said, I'm sitting in some traffic. Freeway closed at Woodridge. Road work ahead. Start from the beginning. Way back when I was a kid, I was told about Democrats and Republicans. Basically, Republicans was evil white people who didn't want to share with black people, and black people, black people was Democrats. Now, never really questioned it until I got older.
1.1 miles.
Once I got older, I started asking questions like, why is there a white party and why is there a black party? It don't seem to make sense. Why two parties of race would, why the two parties are based on race only? Because that's all I was told about it. There was a black party and a white party, and it didn't make any sense. So I reluctantly went to the polls and I started voting just straight Democrat. Vote Democrat ticket. Straight Democrat. That's what I did. And after a while, my parents, they stopped being on me to vote. They stopped getting on me to vote. And I finally stopped voting. Left politics alone. And black people was telling me, it don't matter who you vote for anyway. They all greedy. They all want the same thing. Just another white man in the White House. That's why they call it the White House, because it's for white people. So I listened to them. And I didn't get into politics again until later on. So, while going through some personal things, I was somewhat reintroduced to politics by some guy named Wade. He was deep into it. I didn't know the difference between a Democrat and Republican and forgot all about it, to be quite honest, because it had been years since I had voted or even talked about president. Didn't even know who was in office. And he was dead serious. He stood up in the church. He was like, I don't want to hold you up. We're supposed to separate church and politics. But I'm warning y'all, in 2008, we're going to have a black man running for president. Well, he said we're going to have a man that could be considered the first black president running for president. Now, he's not really black, and he's got some ties to some bad people. He had us to go online. I don't even remember the website because this was so long ago. And look this guy up. He had us to look him up and research him. And, of course, the guy looked like he was an African guy. I'm like, black president? More like African president. And he had all these Muslim-type ties. And I didn't even know why the Muslims would be considered bad people back then. Had no idea what was going on, but he had a lot of ties to a lot of Muslims. And even at that stage of the game, I was like, yeah, this African guy here got a lot of ties to these folks. Might not want the Iranians, because that's what I was thinking. Might not want these Iranians running the country. So forgot all about it again. Just completely forgot about it. 2 years later, I'm almost out of that. I've overcome those personal issues, and I'm listening to music, and I'm tired of listening to music. My music is hard to find. I listen to a lot of anime, K-pop, just a lot of music that's not on American radio at all. None. They don't have none of that good stuff. And I'm sick of listening to my music. I'm not that big on internet back then either, because a lot of music sites wasn't out. A lot of ways of getting music wasn't around. My video game music, I was blowing through it. It was also hard to record. I was still using tapes and stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm wearing my music out. I'm like, well, I guess I can put it on AM radio. See what those smart white people are listening to, because a lot of smart white people listen to that stuff. So I flipped it over on AM. And I didn't want to stick it over on 740 AM. Because that station to me, I've flipped it over there before. And I've heard people with it on 740. And I was like, man, that station is boring. Don't want to put it on there. And I started flipping stations. Just flipping them. And it was early in the morning, about 9:30. And I eventually ran into a station, 950. And I heard what sounded like a gay guy, a black guy, a regular white guy, and a country bumpkin. And they was all talking about the first black president running. They're talking about the first black president running. They're talking about Hillary Clinton, which really sparked me because I was always told how good the Clintons was. And I was like, ooh, Hillary Clinton is running. I'm going to vote for her. This is for the 2008 election. And I'm thinking about the black guy. Man, the black guy never ran. Probably a Republican. No, he turned out to be a Democrat. I was like, well. And then they were talking about the Republican, McCain. And they were talking crap about Hillary that I had never heard before. They were talking crap about the first black president, Barack, which I still, at that time, did not tie into the man that I had read about, which I thought was an African guy who had all these Arab ties, even though they were talking about it on the radio, and did not tie that, together, because I forgot about it. And they were talking about McCain. So I'm like, man, this sounds terrible, but it's hilarious. The show is funny. I'm gonna listen to this. They had Kip Attaway on there and talking about the politics and stuff, and I'm becoming informed. Eventually, it was election time, and I had learned so much stuff about Hillary. Hillary had dropped out, and I'm like, man, I can't believe it. I can't believe all this dirty stuff about the Clintons. I've never heard this stuff before. What's really been going on with the news? And this here same show, they've been talking about how the news is scripted and how the news is lying to you. And I'm like, man, yeah, right. The news can't be that bad. I started watching the news, and the election time was coming up, and I'm like, man, I think they just hating on this black guy because he's about to win. Sure enough, Barack won, and they were talking about how terrible it was going to be. And like I said, I was learning all kind of stuff about him, but I wasn't really believing it because the TV news kept talking about how good things were going to be. At least after the second day, because like the first 2 days, they were like, well, this is the president. Oh, and did you know he was going to get divorced? He had another girlfriend. They dropped the story like the second day he was in office. So I'm keeping an eye out on the news because I decided not to vote. I didn't want to vote because I was scared that I might be a part of getting the first black president assassinated. I didn't vote for him, heard all that stuff, and I'm like, man, what if this is true? All this stuff they're saying about him, all the ties he has to him. And not long after he was in there, some friends of his that he used to go to the bathhouse with ended up dead. Like, okay. And then they were talking about the Clinton kill list. And then Clinton was working for him. So they were talking about all of that stuff, and I still wasn't believing it. Steady listening to the news, and I figured, well, let me see what's gonna really happen. Watch the news, listen to the radio. Watch the news, listen to the radio. News talking about how good things are gonna be. Radio talking about how bad things are gonna be. But they're also saying why they're gonna be that way. What's gonna happen to you months down the road when a certain bill passes and things like that. Bills were passed, executive orders were written, and I'm getting more and more informed on things, and I'm watching things fall apart in my own life. I'm watching my paycheck decrease from the little $860 every 2 weeks I was making down to like $820, then eventually like $740, And after his first 4 years, I was making $690 every 2 weeks after a 30 cents raise. And it was at that time that I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. I can't survive like this here. Everything that the radio was telling me about the Democratic Party, it was like, boom, it was right there. Everything they predicted would happen was happening. And the news kept telling me that everything was great. Everything was good. This is the hope and change. And that we need to get used to unemployment being crazy as it was. And the debt was steady growing. And eventually I cut off the TV news and went straight and stayed on the radio. I was told to stay away from people like Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity because they was racist. And I started listening to their shows and becoming even more informed than I was when I listened to the other guys, which were actually just Walton and Johnson, which is how I got my start into politics. And start watching what's really happening. And then I decided I'd dig a little bit deeper and do a little research on the Democrat Party themselves. Try to figure out why come black people vote Democrat. Because that was still bothering me. It's like, we got the first black president in here. He spent more money than all the presidents combined. And black people are still voting Democrat. Why? If this is what Democrats are doing, why are we doing that? And so, with a little research, I found out that before the Democrats and Republicans, America was known as the Democratic Republic. And the reason they split was because some people wanted slavery, some didn't. And so now I'm getting down to my history, so to say, or American history, because that's what it is. And this stupid ass phone is about to stop.